Thank you for joining us on today's News Talk.
Good morning, Sonia. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Now, this is this article concerns a particular bugbear of mine. I have a history with what used to be known as the Child Support Agency, now the Child Maintenance Service. Your story is very
Hmm.
detailed. You've gone into a great deal of detail about how this veteran has been threatened with inflated arrears after this 10-year long plus civil service battle with the Child Maintenance Service. What was going on?
Well, it's one of many, sadly. It's a story I've been following since last summer, and I've got to know what I would now term victims of this issue over those months, and there are thousands of them. I've spoken to dozens personally. I've met what I call survivors, and sadly also families who have lost loved ones to suicide over very often inflated or fictitious arrears. I saw evidence of this over the last few months that, very often the paying parent in that case will be given a inflated arrear without kind of any substantiating evidence. Very often they'll be taken to court over it. The CMS, the Child Maintenance Service, has special powers to enforce court orders without ever needing to put their workings out in front of a judge. And very often people are slapped with fines, which are sometimes 1,000% more than what they should be charged with, and left with no legal recourse.
This is a completely failed agency. I have my own personal experience of this. In 2006, the minister who was responsible for running the Child Support Agency actually apologised to myself and my daughter in Parliament. And that was because our local MP, Geoffrey Clifton Brown, had pursued them. They were literally taking the money from my daughter's father and losing it. We weren't receiving
Mm.
it. And it was literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And they also were, I did a 5-year long diary in the Daily Mail about the problems of the Child Support Agency, and they renamed it, and we all thought, well, nobody really thought it was all going to be right. But so yours is like a really long-term look into what's going wrong here. And this particular case involves Lee Windsor. Started in 2008 when it was the CSA, and then obviously that was succeeded by the CMS in 2012. And so they mistakenly classified his service invalidating pension, or is it invalidating pension? I'm
It's
not sure about that.
invalid. So,
Yeah,
so
right, as an
yeah, so
occupational.
basically when he left service, yeah.
Right. And so that, and the problem is when they make a mistake, and I know this, they, rather than just address it and deal with it, they just seem to pile problems on top of that. And one of the things that you were saying is about people who have taken their lives. Now, I've heard these stories as well. So this is a terrible situation. It's already difficult, isn't it? When, parents separate, it's already difficult for the child. But when they're wrangling over money and money is being lost, I mean, in your understanding and what you've seen, is there anything that can be done with this agency, or does it need to be razed to the ground and started again in some way?
Well, I think it does. I don't see a way out from this problem for them. This has been going on since the late 90s, and there are two accounts stating all the way back to 97 and 98, which are just, still going, which are meant to have been stopped, which are collecting inflated arrears. And this isn't something that's kind of just me finding this out now. This has been said in oral hearings in Parliament for years, that there are seriously deep-rooted problems with the way that the CMS collects money, the way that it calculates things. And of course, their claim is that it's not as bad now as it used to be, but that's not really a defense. And actually, we saw a similar case, funny enough, over in the Netherlands, where their child collection service, which is a similar kind of body, did exactly the same thing for many, many years. They were collecting inflated arrears for a long time. That scandal actually ended up almost bringing down the government over there. So, this one is even bigger, I would suggest, because obviously we have a bigger population, and there's even more use of this service over here. But if we take a look at the statistics, so the mortality rate for paying parents is over 14 times higher than the national average. Um, and we know that within that body there are many suicides. Obviously, not all of those are verified to be as a result of the child maintenance service. But the child maintenance service refuses to release its own data on that matter, claiming privacy. despite the families having asked for death certificates in many cases. And we know that it's suicide in many others, as was raised in the high-profile cases like Gavin Briggs and other guys who sadly lost their lives over this. And very often these are young men who are either in high-pressure jobs or very often in the army or veterans. Um, and this isn't just affecting men as well. I've spoken to one woman who had her income inflated by over 1,000% because they just didn't look at her latest accounts. And for 3 or 4 years, they've been increasing her numbers based on a £70,000 salary that she hadn't earned for years and years and years. She was actually a student with virtually no money coming in. And then they took her to court over it and tried to seize her house. They can do all sorts of things. They can seize your passport. They can try and
Right,
throw you in jail.
right, right. Let's
So
come back to that. I tell you what, Joseph, let's go to some news headlines.